this to go live. Waiting for the video to load. Okay, we are live. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is March the 20th, Saturday morning. Today, Yunsky and I are hanging out really early in the morning, and we're going to start recapping these some of these tickers that we did this week. Some of the trades on why I traded them, why they weren't actual patterns, why things broke patterns and went the wrong direction. And we're just going to kind of just run down a couple of these things real quick. So we're going to start with earlier things, like as in Friday, and then we're going to go back in time to Monday. So we're starting off by talking about yesterday. Yesterday, CLVS. Crazy. Yunsky didn't trade it. I traded it. It was a pattern breaker, but I was able to break even on the whole day. More of the story was it wasn't worth the headache, and because I didn't understand the movements. So to break this down real quick into what I thought was happening on it, I thought that as the stock started pushing, let me jump over to the different charts real quick. We're going to talk about CLVS. I'm sorry, I didn't switch the charts quick enough. So I thought as this is coming up to test the breakout of the pre-market high, it's going to go up, probably double, and then fail, right? So I was anticipating a $1 move, $1.50 move, then I'm going to hit the short and short it back down, and it's going to come back down to where it came from and probably consolidate around $6.50 or $6, okay? Well, I was wrong because volume showed up, and volume was increasing, and it was massive. We're talking 2 million trades? Shares? What do you call that, Yunsky?
Shares.
2 million shares traded an hour. I mean, a minute, all right? This is insane. So it keeps pushing, it keeps pushing. And I'm waiting. I'm like, what in the deal? You see this volume show up here right at 9:43, and you're thinking this is still going. So finally, right around 10:15, you start to see, right when 10 o'clock hits, you start to see some crackage. And you're like, okay, this is broken out of its high. This is the downward trend. So I sent this to one of our students, and I asked him, I said, hey, man, looking in hindsight, how would you have traded this? So these are these white arrows. He said he saw this as a death candle, right? And to be honest, yeah, that is a death candle. That potentially could be a death candle because it cracked through one of the moving averages and it continued to go down. It didn't break its last consolidation support though. It found consolidation again, and then it ran itself back up. So possibly you could hold, but your break-even spot would have been, well, you should get out. Because if it reverses like that quickly in a 15-minute period of time, it wasn't a trade, right? So I traded this here as well, and I held all the way to break even. So I held this trade for about 45 minutes until it came out. I think my first entry was at like 8.35 or 8.25, somewhere in those 10-cent range. I was in it with half size, and I was looking to add. But as it came down under VWAP and came back up, I took out half my shares because I was like, this doesn't seem right. This hasn't broken down far enough its initial breakout spot or even past its pre-market highs yet. So as it comes back up, I just cut out, and I'm looking for this ABC pattern that's forming right here on the 1 minute, ABCD pattern. Typical long pattern, typical short getting squeezed, long pattern going up. And I was like, all right, what's the deal here? So I get in it again, full size, thinking it's the top, and I'm wrong, and I stop out, take a small loss, and then I sit on my hands, and I'm like, all right, I'm waiting. I'm waiting because I know the top's going to form again. So the top goes up, keeps going, the D forms, and it goes down, and you see these two death candles? You're like, okay, this is going to go down now. You think it's going to go down because this is huge volume red. Was at 2.2 million at 11:48, and then you had 2.2 million again at 12 and 12:01. Back to back, you have these massive 2 million and red 0.3 million candles. So you're thinking that's death candle, right? But it doesn't even test VWAP. It consolidates. So I'm like, it's not done. It's going to do another push. So I'm completely sitting on my hands at this point and just waiting. I'm waiting for the top to show itself. And it starts climbing back up. And as soon as it starts approaching this $9 again, I'm starting to watch level 2 very carefully. And I'm like, all right, what's happening here? What's happening here? Is anything happening? And I saw massive resistance in sellers at 9. One of the hedge funds stopped trading it at 9, dumped their shares. So I was like, okay, good. This is my entry point. So I size in fully at 870 right here, and it drops down. I'm like, okay, that's a death candle. That's nice. And it goes over a little bit more, and it breaks the consolidation point that we just saw and goes down again. So now I know my 870 probably won't be tested anymore at all today. So I'm clearly top ticked it on the backside, which is super rare, super hard, and super risky. All three of those things. It's too much volume in this ticker to trade it like any type of pattern. There is no pattern here that is with 100 samples of tracking. There's nothing here that makes this any sense. So then what I did is I just waited. I waited. My target exit was consolidation down here of 725. So I was waiting. I was waiting with all my shares until at least 750, 770 is cracking. Comes down, tests 770 closely, but then bounces off back up to VWAP and consolidates. And I'm like, all right, approaching really close to end of day. They're not going to want to hold shares into the weekend. This is due for another crack. So I see this weird volume show up like this. This weird volume just kind of humps up at the end of the day here. And remember, my average is 870. So I don't care. Like, I don't care what the test is on it. I've already taken my losses and broken my even. So I'm just essentially hanging out. See this crack happen. And I'm like, what is this? Find out that Goldman rated COVS as a sell. So hedge funds started dumping shares. So as this was dumping, I took out half my size into the 770 because I saw the 750 had this huge 100,000 share buyer at it this late in the day. I'm like, okay, that's where they're stopping the crash at. And it consolidates and it goes back up to VWAP. And as it's going back up, I cut out at 765 my last exit on it before it pops through VWAP and finishes strong. So overall, this trade or this ticker was not a good short. There's many things that this thing signified early on in its day that made this not a good pattern to play. And Yunsky didn't play it, and I'd like to know why you didn't play it, Yunsky.
Sure. So, yeah, that's right. Firstly, I was green on the day for another trade, so
Very nice.
I wasn't interested in taking a risk. I wanted to end my day early and enjoy the weekend. But there are a few fundamentals which, from my side, told me to either avoid it or it's not worth the headache. Firstly is the float was quite large, so 100 million I think it was for this ticker.
Okay.
So I knew it's not going to be moving fast enough for me to be particularly interested unless we get some extreme volume. Yeah, you did mention we get 3 million volume minute candles, right?
Yeah,
but
it's a 86 million float, 55% institutional ownership.
Yeah, so with such a even though the volume seemed large, there's lots of room for other players to enter.
Right.
So that was one, but probably the most key thing, and it wasn't on my watch at all actually, was because in the pre-market it only gapped up to $7, which is 35% from yesterday's close. So I generally don't like to touch these because these ones tend to have room to gap up more once the market's opened.
Mm-hmm.
I like the range to show itself in the pre-market, so I can use some kind of resistance or guidance from it.
Right.
But if I did look at it during the day, which I did because we were on stream and you alerted me to it anyway, I still stayed away. The thing, if you look at 1022, what looks like the death candle, I mean that's a pretty significant drop, right? What's that? 50-cent drop in 1 minute, huge sell-off volume, you think, okay, it's done. Um,
Right.
so even if I did play it, so I'm gonna just say, let's just pretend I did enter it, right?
Okay.
There are still some danger warnings for me, where I would have walking away regretting that I entered in the first place. So let's say I entered in, just before that death candle at 10:22,
Okay.
which is a pretty decent entry, right?
Yeah. Makes sense
Dipped
because
again.
it's on the curl of the bounce back up after the first death.
Yeah, and we've seen it many times how,
Mm-hmm.
tickers end up failing, showing this kind of, pattern,
Right.
or price action, I should say. And 10:23, it dips way below VWAP actually. But that's my first alarm bell. So it bounces off the low of below VWAP. The low
Mm-hmm.
was 734.
Yep.
So it bounces up and then consolidates and it's slowly fading. And you think, okay, maybe this is the end of it. Okay. And that's what I would have done. I would have stayed in it. Even when it tested VWAP and
Mm-hmm.
went through it, I probably would have stayed in because my entry was so good. And you can see it dipped down to VWAP again. So, it's not done by all means, but it's, um, because I have such a good entry, I'm able to just sit and wait.
Right. Yeah, you're
Now,
already 71 cents in the green at that point.
yeah,
So you're already thinking like it's already got you tricked mindset wise, and you're already like, yeah, I'm just gonna hold this for a while.
yeah. So because I've seen things, they struggle around VWAP and they fade anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I said, if my entry was so good, I would have just held anyway, and then I would have stopped out at 11:13. I'm probably just broke even, um, because it's too choppy. So I want to see, um, at, sorry, at 11:13,
Mm-hmm.
it's essentially recovered that massive drop that I had earlier.
Yeah.
And there's gonna there's gonna be a lot of people looking at this chart and thinking, all right, it's made a recovery, it's now back in the strength, it's hanging around over VWAP, so
Mm-hmm.
let's just buy. And we can see that, right, because it continued grinding up.
Yep. And you
So
see it.
I would have closed out and walked away at that point, because if you look at what happened after that, it was, you think it's fading and then just shoots back up, fading, shoots back up. I mean, you might say it's this ABCD pattern, but it's just choppy. Like, it's not showing its hand one way or the other. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I was probably right in that sense, because you see the same thing happen the opposite side at 11:49, how it just drops and then grinds back up and drops, then grinds back up. And
Yep.
that's telling me that, there's, I think you mentioned, right, there's a lot of hedge funds in it, there's a lot of big players, it's got
Yep.
too much attention, and when a ticker is overcrowded like this, it's, um, less predictable. It can be much more erratic, and yeah, I would have closed the window and just walked away.
Yeah, it's not worth trading, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So basically, what we got in the moral of the story for CLVS is it wasn't a trade in the first place. It was not a good pattern. It was only gapped up 35%, which means there's not a lot of range to short it downwards. There's more range upwards for it. And as you can see from the gap scan on what it closed to and what it did, it was a much better long anyways. It wasn't long until it wasn't. But if you got in at that initial morning spike up when it didn't ever crack, you should have had like a $7 average, and $7 average riding it all the way up until 850, 820, even end of day 770. You still are in the green. So this is, to me, the only reason this became a possible short is because I was riding the waves with it. This isn't something that you can predict or track even, because there's so much volatility or things that can change in it. This behaved like it was a super small float and it was an 80 million share float. So it was extremely, extremely weird. So, okay. So that was one we wanted to talk about. I also want to jump over to talk about on, what was that day we traded Evolve? Was that 17, Yunsky? Or was that 16? Was that 18? It was 18, wasn't it? Yeah, so on 13, we traded Evolve. And I'm looking at the 1 minute charts here, but I'm going to pull this up first and do this. So we traded something else on March
Yeah.
18th, Yunsky and I both looked at and saw a ticker called Evolve, EVOL. We both made plans for it. We both called it out on the Discord channel and the watch list, and we talked about what we were going to do. If you were watching the live stream from that day, you probably saw us trading it. So I'm going to jump over to this screen here and show you guys kind of how we traded this and what our thought processes were. And I want to start with actually you, Yunsky, to tell me why you liked this ticker. First off, Yunsky's a lot more
Yeah.
conservative than I am, so um, he's a lot more patient than I am with stuff. So I love to get his opinion on it. So please,
I think there are pros and cons with that though. There are a lot of plays which I miss, but I'm fine with them. You know, I do
right,
look for the the A plus setups, let's say.
which is perfect. This was an A+ setup in my opinion. That you nailed, like you nailed this one. So tell me what you did here and why you did it.
I okay. First, I'll say it was an A setup, not an A plus, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
So, um, I liked the pre-market action and the pre-market volume. So there wasn't much attention on this one, and we saw that it had lost quite a lot of its gain
Mm-hmm.
by market open. Then you see almost immediately we get some on quite light volume, some extreme moves. Now, I would have probably entered around the 450 area if the moves weren't so extreme. But I was this is what makes it an A setup and not an A plus, because I was actually hoping to enter in earlier, but I didn't pull the trigger because I wanted to see how the chart was going to react to such aggressive price moves with low volume,
Right.
and it halted. You can see. However, we do know if we go to the daily,
Yep.
there is a reason why it top ticked around 5-6, and this is what I had mapped out on my chart as essentially the ultimate resistance. You know, if it broke it, then I would have cut my losses and walked away.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see from late 2015, 2016, 2018, and 2017, there is a noticeable consolidation around that 560 area.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured there's a lot of, okay, maybe not a lot, but there are going to be enough bag holders that are going to be selling as soon as it reaches 560. They want to get out of their break even. But also, new traders are going to look at that and think like, it's going to struggle to get above 560. So they're probably going to want to sell before it gets there anyway. So that's what I banked on. When it shot up there, you can see initially it made quite a significant rejection. I knew that was I didn't want to rush into that one because that was the first minute after the halt.
Right.
So I like to see things, there are some orders that need to be backfilled after the halt. So
And that
again,
volume, man.
yeah, it's crazy. But I actually entered at 9:47 because I could see I was watching the volume along with the clock. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
I could see that the volume was decreasing and the price was struggling at that level.
Right.
So it was an indicator to me to start shorting it. So that's where I went in. You can see there were some attempts to go above, and it did actually break a higher day just a little bit, but I wasn't too worried because, again, the volume was kind of low. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I was pretty happy with that one. A couple of minutes later, it just flushed,
So where was your
and
entry?
then my entry was 540 ish.
540-ish initial entry.
Yeah.
Very
So
nice.
yeah, this was a super clean trade. I'm really proud of this one. And I could see that there was the volume just pretty much went dead after that. So
Yep.
even the bounce at 10:10 was going to do nothing. Um, and I took my profits just below the pre-market consolidation. It did drop below that a
What
bit
time
more,
was
but I
that?
wasn't around, and around 2 o'clock, 2:05 or something.
So that
Yeah.
was the no. What time did you take your profits out?
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, yeah. 2:10 ish.
2:10. So
Yeah. pretty much the pre-market consolidation area.
Which was 1410, right? Right here.
Just I can't see your screen, so
388. What was your exit price? Exit price and time?
390.
390 right here.
Yeah.
Basically.
So it did drop further, as you can see, but I'm fine with that. I didn't want to stick around much longer. I was happy with the profits.
That was very good. It was a very good trade.
In future, if I did have time to stick around, I would have just taken some profits at that point, and then kept some to see what would happen. But overall, very happy with this trade.
Yeah. So I was very similar to Yunsky in this one. I like this type of pattern. So what I saw is I started watching this in the after hours, right? I saw this big spike happen in the after hours right here. And I was like, ooh, look at this, $1.50 gain on something. That's interesting. What's it going to do? Comes back down almost where it started at. I was like, oh, well, that didn't do much, if anything. So I just kept it on my watch list. The next morning, it consolidates and it spikes up. And I was like, wow, okay, that's very interesting to me. I don't know why it would do that. It shouldn't have done that. There was no reason for it. So I'm going to watch you. And I start watching it. I start watching it. I'm like, okay, it's fading, but it's still at the top of the gap list. It's like 5th or 6th at the top of the gap list of the day. I'm like, okay, this is going to get some attention. So I start building a long position. Down here on this consolidation around 390, 340. Not 390, 340, 394, 396. So I have an average right around $4 for my entry of my long. And then I'm holding it, and I'm getting super confident because something is telling me that this $4 is not breaking. Now, the $4 should have broke because of after hours the day before. It broke back down to 370 or 360, 370. So I'm using that as my stop. I'm like, I can build a pretty big position off of this 4 number for a 40-cent down, potential for a $5 up just in testing the pre-market highs again, right? So that's like a 1 to 2.5 risk reward ratio. So I'm like, okay, I can do that for a long. It's kind of risky because there's not much volume like Yunsky was talking about. But if I just get that little bit of a pop, even get 15, 20 cents off of it with a couple thousand shares, that's still pretty decent, right? It's still a decent trade. So I take it long. Nothing happens at the bell, and I'm waiting. We have this little fake out dip, and I'm like, okay, I've seen this before happen. I'm not worried. If it breaks down underneath 365, that's when I got to be worried and sell my position, take the loss. But it didn't. It rebounded off of its lowest spot in pre-market, which was right beforehand, right at 375, and it shoots up. And it goes into a halt. At VWAP, I sell half because I'm not being greedy on my stuff, and I held the rest of it up after the halt. It shoots up, and I'm waiting to see what the top is. Once the top clearly defines itself, which obviously was a 550, 560 was the tip top, but 550 was the top consolidation. Looking at the daily, like Yunsky talked about, I saw that it couldn't get to the actual top of that consolidation range that was 588. So anywhere within inside of here, 340, 350, 360, any of these numbers, this is the top range. So I'm like, okay, here comes the top. So I sell off at like 515, not too tip to top because I was selling on the drop. When it dropped off, then I'm waiting for my entry point to short it because I also am going to short this thing back down. So the same thing, Yunsky's looking at that. I'm looking at volume. I see that this 550 can't hit. So what I'm waiting for is confirmation that this is the backside. So as soon as confirmation appears on this big candle testing the high breakout and immediately failing with this volume that's overwhelming the last minute volume and it's still red, I full size 521, hammer it. I get a drop down to VWAP, which gives me some strength. I have a little bit this green bounce for some little bit of these earlier shorts covering. That's what this one random green candle is. And I'm feeling okay because I'm like, all right, I need about 30 seconds to a minute. And then the next candle comes VWAP break. I'm gravy. I'm good. My target on this is where I came from. My consolidation point of my average long was $4. So 399.8. So that was my average. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to wait. And I did. But I played it smart. At that pre-market consolidation at 425, I did take half out. because I'm not going to risk it reversing. We've seen too many things this month that just were immediately risk and reverse and go back up to VWAP and take away all your gains. So I took out half at 425, which was already $1 in the green. And I was just letting the rest wait for a while. My actual target exit on this was 380, but I had other stuff to do. So as soon as it cracked 4, or touched 4 actually right here, I just got the rest of my shares out before noon. So that was a pretty short work day, and Yunsky and I basically almost had the same entry. I think your average was what, 522 based upon your calculations, right?
Yeah, it was around there.
And mine was 521. So he had a better entry by 1 cent. He got the better exit by 20 cents too. But the moral of the story is the Hive thought together independently and collectively and succeeded on this ticker. So more of the story is, guys, that is why we traded EVOL on the, what day was that? The 18th? That was the 18th. That was Thursday. Yeah. So that's why we both traded EVOL on the 18th. Hope you guys did well on it. Let us know in the comment section below if you did. If you did trade it, what did you see? Why you traded it? Did you like the news? Love to get your feedback on that. All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, that was the cleanest trade of the week for me.
Yeah, it was clean. It was pretty clean. All right, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry.
So David's saying in chat, he's like, okay, that's David's saying in chat, Yunsky, what did you use to pull the blue lines, and what are they telling you? I think he's referring to the blue lines. Yeah, the blue lines on my screen, I guess. So
yeah, sorry, I'm not sharing that wasn't my chart sharing. I told Ben to follow what I was saying. So what blue lines were on your chart?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if that was doing CLVS or if that was doing Evolve.
I think it was Evolve.
The vertical.
The vertical.
I don't have any blue lines on Evolve. I have blue lines on the daily on Evolve, which I mark out the daily lines. Yeah, blue lines like these. These blue lines, David? You're clearing off these candlesticks.
Yeah, we'll fix it next time so that I'm sharing the chart when I'm speaking so I can show.
Yeah, and David's congratulating you for timing the volume on that too. That was pretty dope.
Yeah, I think that's quite a that's a secret technique that I probably shouldn't have shared. So David, keep that.
Probably shouldn't have shared that secret technique. Okay.
Yeah, I won't mention that in future, but yeah, David, it's good to try and estimate as best you can the volume if the volume is what you're keeping an eye on if it's going to break your pattern.
Right. 100%. So, I'm gonna pull up another one that has happened this week, and that was.
Before you start, I actually need to head out, so I'm sorry, but
okay.
I'll catch you later.
All right, homie.
In a bit, guys. Thanks, guys.
Peace out.
Guys.
We got 2 done with Yunsky, so now it'll be. Let me see if I can flip to this. Okay, do I have a solo screen that I can throw up of just me? Now I have this. All right, so we'll do this a little bit differently. So now I'm going to talk about ZCMD that traded on, what day was this? 3/17, Wednesday, March 17th. ZCMD did some crazy stuff in the pre-market, and then it ran into this really weird wall, and then it failed off of that. So I traded this ticker that day because I've been watching it since the early stages of the pre-market. I want to tell you guys a little bit about what I saw. So ZCMD starts the day, gaps up, right? We have this consolidation comes down and drops itself back down to test the consolidation. These candles appear to be super big and thick, but remember, at this time of day, which is right around 8:10, you see this flash of volume, it's not really real, so you can't really anticipate it. But this is what happened. It broke pre-market highs. So once something breaks pre-market highs, you have to be very, very careful on the short. You don't want to enter in this too soon because that shows massive, massive strength on the short. Well, ZCMD continued to stay right around the 320 level, tried to push the 350, and it would come back. It was like something getting ready for a running start, and as it would run up, it would just it'd come back. So I knew that it looked like there was like a hidden seller up there, like a really, really large hidden seller. The volume wasn't bad on it at all. Got a couple million shares in the 5 minutes, and you're just like, okay. So I'm waiting for the bell. I'm waiting patiently. I'm waiting for this thing to show itself what it's going to do. And immediately at the bell, you see this surge of volume come through. And you're like, whoa. Basically, the market maker poured his order. So you see, this was a flat top breakout, which flat top meaning there's a flat top, and then it breaks out. So at the open, it dips down, and then it just rips up. And it rips up, and it keeps going, and then it runs into this 415, and then you see this massive order smash on the bid, or smash on the ask. I don't know which one it is. It smashes on the level 2, and it literally drops down. And you're like, whoa, what was that? So it tries to come up and test it again, and that order is still there. So at that point, I'm like, okay, this is a short. So this death candle happens, and I'm like, all right, this is now, if this can't recover, this is where the short comes into play at, right? So we see consolidation, and as it starts to panic out here on the 5 minute, I full size. I full size the hit at the consolidation and flush it through VWAP. As soon as it goes down underneath the VWAP and starts to hold and bounce around, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to wait. My target exit, I followed pretty closely. I started sizing out on each one of these lines. So my first exit was actually pretty quick, which was the consolidation of the pre-market, which was a pretty high number, but still, because of the volume and the weirdness it showed, it could have instantly reversed and went back up to $4 or $5. So I didn't want to risk that. It's never good to risk it. So what I did is I took some profits out, and then as it went throughout the day, I just kept taking profits. At the end of the day, it did surprisingly go down to the pre-market lows. Typically, things don't die back to pre-market lows. They're usually staying around pre-market consolidation or pre-market highs even, unless you have this type of weird pattern that has massive resistance up here. There wasn't substantially too big of resistance on the daily. It is a fresh chart, so it did have a lot of risk factor with that. It did have the possibility of going supernova and just continuing to go up, which is another reason why I really waited for the backside on this to happen. But one of the things you see with these newer companies that do have cheaper prices of the shares, they will be releasing more and more shares into the market each time the price goes up because they need to raise money to pay their bills. So that's what happened. That's what happened pretty quickly on this one, actually, which was sad to see. We would have liked to have had some more range on it because obviously when a stock does this all the time, it's not going to have a lot of buyers to believe in it. So it means it won't ever be a $10 stock, an $8 stock to play with. You'd have to have a couple of hedge funds take over and grab most of the shares to make the float really, really low to make the volatility smack up. But that's highly unlikely that'll happen. So that's ZCMD that was there. If you have any questions about that, let me know what you think. If you traded it, please put a comment down below on why you traded it, what you saw on it. If you went long, I really want to know why you went long on this. Like, I really want to know, is it the fundamentals that you like this in? If you went long, did you go long pre-market? Did you go long at the end of the day when the price was cheaper again? Did you go long, get stuck up here with the bag? Are you a bag holder? It's okay if you are. I hold some bags too. But just wanted to know, like, what was your mindset in trading this? Leave a comment below. Let me know. I'll probably answer you on my thoughts. If you're angry because I shorted you down, sorry. All right. So next one I want to talk about is, I think David, did you have any ones in chat that I can talk about? Any ones from this past week that you had a question about? I have a couple that I was looking at, like ANCN I did a good trade on that one too, but I don't know if that helps you out at all. Invalid symbol. What? Oh yeah. Forgot ANCN combined themselves with somebody else the day after I traded them, so I can't look up the ticker anymore. SSY. Okay, David's got a question about float rotation. Go ahead and ask the question, and then I'll do an introduction. So it's can be clipped also, Zach. Do you have a ticker about the float rotation that I can pull up? I'm the only one in here. Okay, so float rotation. Let's just pull up an example of, let me find something. SPCB, float rotation, SPCB on FinViz, SPCB, it's 14.4 million. On yesterday, David? Okay. So, all right. So, awesome. Hey guys. So one of our students, I'll call him a student, has asked us a little bit of a question. He wants to understand how float rotations play a part in a stock and what they really mean. And he asked me to kind of give it a looking at in consideration to a ticker that happened this week, yesterday, the March 19th. It's called SPCB, a specific ticker. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about the float rotations in this realm. So in evaluating SPCB, the float on it is 14 million, and the market cap is about 42 million, right? Institutionally owned 13%, 16% insider owned. So as this ticker opens up, it opens up in the beginning of the day, right? I would say right around 8 o'clock, it gets in breaking news and it starts firing up. It goes substantially up from about 160 all the way up to this 280 mark and into the 3, and it starts consolidating really heavy at 3. Every time it's going to go break out of 3, it's stopping at 320. So a lot of people don't want to short this because it shows insane strength. This is looking like it's going to go way out of the gates, right? This is looking like it's going to do the same thing that we've seen this week. It's going to consolidate and break out. It's already traded. Let me look at this math real quick. Change this to the 15 of the 30 would probably work fine too. So we have what, 7 million, 18 million, and 15 million. So 15 and 18 is 33, plus another 7 is 40. 40 million shares traded pre-market in this stock, right? That is 2 times the float rotation. That means when the float has rotated twice, the average price now is greater than what it started at because the float has rotated so many times. It's taking the actual average cost of the held shares up, if that makes sense. So in order for that to go back down, you have to have the same thing happen in the negative direction to go back to where it came from, because you've had so much rotation upwards. So back on the 5-minute on this is actually a really good ticker to talk about. Good job, David. This was running into a wall. Pre-market, if you were trading this and you weren't paying attention to SPCB pre-market, it was literally running into a wall every time it touched 320, 315. You would see like buy, and then these massive sell orders just continuing to just show up, which was weird, right? You're thinking this is weird because on the daily, there's not any volume anywhere in the past while that has made this thing like substantial. Maybe 2015, but that's too old, right? So that's 6 years ago. So you had this one day back last year that it did the same thing. And I was like, did the same thing, then failed. It came from nowhere, same like it did today or yesterday. Came from nowhere, spikes up and keeps running into this, and then it doesn't go anywhere, and it ends up and goes away, right? So I said, okay, this is interesting. I think this is a short. And everybody I talk to is like, no, it's too volatile. You can't predict this, blah, blah, blah. I think it's a short because there's something weird happening at this number. So I didn't trade it though. I was too busy messing with other small stuff. And this was 50-50 shot. 50-50 shot that it was going to go push out the gates, break through that 320s, go up to $4, $4.60, $70, $5, and be awesome. Because it's a 15 mil float, rotated twice pre-market. There's good chances that it would continue to rotate up, but it didn't. As soon as the bell rang, you saw this massive drop off 5-10 minutes before the bell. You're like, uh-oh, that's not good. You broke VWAP finally. You came back down to your lows below that consolidation area. Okay, well, let's see what happens. You hold true to that same level of VWAP right when the bell rings. You get this small little pop. Look at this. You get this small little pop on VWAP that people are trying as the bell rings, and then it just flushes. And then it flushes again. And then they try to save it. Those dip buyers can jump in. They're like, I'm going to save this. It's gonna work out. And then you see it's just making lower lows. Even on the bottom of the bounce, it gets even sold off even harder and goes way, way down. Consolidates. By 10 o'clock, it's already lost almost half of its gains. That's absurd, right? How do these things happen? You can't blame the shorts because this is a shorts like favorite pattern to see, but very, very often we don't even trade this because we're not in control of it. We're thinking just like you, this is going to go up. And when we see something like this, we're surprised. We're like, wow, that was easy. That was easy. Like you could trade this short and get lucky and be like, I got it. But the other 7 times you trade this, you'll be squeezed and blow your account up. So I can't say like trade this pattern. I can't say you can even track this pattern to predict it because this only happens when there's a hidden seller, when there's massive shares being dumped into the market. I wouldn't be surprised if a couple weeks from now that we find out that there was either institutionals changing out their shares and they got caught in the mess, if there was a secondary offering that was released, or if just somebody big was sitting here with a bunch of shares since, $1 and they wanted to get rid of them at $3. That's possible too. So this is basically a synopsis on float rotations and why it's dangerous to short when the float has rotated 2-3 times, especially ripping off the bell. I wanted to talk about SPCB for this example of a float rotation because this is rare. It's not trackable. Well, I'm sorry, anything is trackable, but it's hard to replicate this event. It's like I could literally invert this picture after the bell, and that would make more sense to me. It would make more sense to me that this thing, instead of going down $1, would have gone up $1 to $4 and just consolidated the rest of the day at $4, especially with this strength. So for it to do the inverse of this, it's like, well, I mean, this is an outlier. If you can see the trend and see the patterns and the signs into why it was a clear short, then cool. So leave a comment down in the section below. I really want to know if you traded this. I know a lot of people were long this pre-market and they were trying to break that 315 level. And I don't know why they didn't see level 2 continuing to show up with those massive sell orders. I'd love to know if you traded this long, why'd you do that? What did you see? What were you feeling on that? And then also, if you shorted this, what did you see? Like, how did you see that? What points you entered at? And where'd you cover it? Like, did you get lucky? I didn't touch it. This is a typical pattern I would have loved to play, just 100 shares on it, super baby size, just to test it. But I didn't touch it because I was like, nah, I don't want to even risk $20 on it. I don't want to risk $100 on it. I won't risk $1,000 on this test. So at the same time, I had a good day nonetheless with the other things I did. So leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. If you traded it, made money. If you traded it, lost money. Let me know what you think. Thanks, guys. All right, David. I don't think I have any more. Zach, that's about 4 of them, right? I just read. Okay. So, all right, good. Awesome. Well, I'm going to shut down the stream then because I just want to do a quick little recap today for y'all. We're going to try to chop these videos up into smaller little sections to release them out there of the different tickers with a little bit of an intro and outro, so in the future people can come back and look at some of these tickers or even today. So if you found this helpful, give me a thumbs up, give me a like. If you didn't find this helpful, give me a thumbs down and I still won't care. See you guys later.